killed years ago by a Navy SEAL team. NBC News reported that officials would not provide details of where or when Hamza apparently died, nor if any American forces played a role in the death. American rapper A$AP Rocky is expected to testify Thursday during the second day of his assault trial in Sweden. He says he is not guilty of beating up a 19-year-old Afghan refugee in Stockholm a month ago. A producer of some of Broadway's biggest hits dies.
Broadway lights dim in honor of Hal Prince, the legendary Broadway producer and director behind such hits as Fiddler on the Roof, West Side Story, and Phantom of the Opera, died Wednesday morning at the age of 91. The producer was known for pushing boundaries and bringing groundbreaking stories to the Great White Way, like Sweeney Todd, the story of a barber who baked his victims in pies. In his over 50-year career, he earned 21 Tony Awards. He was also a recipient of the prestigious Kennedy Center honor. Andrew Lloyd Webber said all of modern musical theater owes practically everything to him. Michelle Polino, Fox News.
Scientists are back from measuring the Gulf of Mexico's dead zone. That's where there's too little oxygen to sustain marine life. Fertilizers and other nutrients flow into the Gulf, feeding algae, which use up the oxygen. And ahead of the expedition, researchers estimated that the area had grown to a near record 7,800 square miles. They will reveal their findings to the media on Thursday. And state attorneys general suing to stop the $26 billion Sprint T-Mobile U.S. merger say they need more time. Reuters reports that they're asking for a new trial date in December, saying October 7th is unworkable. I'm Carmen Robertson. This is Fox News.
Weekday shopping just got exciting. Join the Agania Shopping Center's Shop and Win on Weekdays promo. Shop or dine at any ASC store or restaurant on weekdays from now till October 31st. Show your receipt at the ASC booth and win instantly. Every $20 spent gets you an entry form to win big at the monthly draws, including round-trip tickets to Manila, $500 ASC gift certificates, and more. See posters and print ads for more. Special thanks to Sky Zone, Fundamental Writers, Vince Jewelers, and Wendy's.
We understand what matters to you because at Docomo Pacific, we're a family too. With the Now Family program, mom, dad, and kids stay connected on the latest devices the whole family can enjoy. For just $155 a month, get 3 lines with 30 gigs of 4G LTE data each, and endless use of your favorite apps without affecting your monthly data bucket. Add more, get more, save more. Docomo Pacific, better together. Some conditions apply.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And as I've been promising you for the last couple of days here, I've got a 5-part question session that I plucked from the pages of the WAPO, also referred to as the Washington Post, probably more popularly referred to as the Washington Compost. And the WAPO has 5 questions about the gun control debate. And what I've done is I've gone through each of the questions so far with the pros and cons as advanced by WAPO, and then I've ruled and tell you what the right answer is. So the first question was, would more guns prevent gun deaths? The correct answer was no. As you were, the answer was yes. More guns in the hands of good guys with guns, yes. Second question, do more guns prevent gun deaths? As you were, do more gun laws prevent gun deaths? Correct answer, no. Because the laws only keep the hands out of the good guys who are potentially the good guys with the guns. The next question is, should schools arm teachers and guards? And I thought that question is properly divided, because it's one thing to arm a teacher, perhaps something totally different to arm a guard in a school who is there to prevent violence. So it makes a lot of sense to arm guards. I would give a qualified yes as far as teachers are concerned on a volunteer basis, provided that the teacher is properly trained in the use of firearms. Today's question: is prohibiting gun ownership compatible with the Second Amendment? Now, obviously, the ding-dong that wrote this for the WAPO missed that episode of Tall Tales when we talk about the Second Amendment.
This article appears to be full of rhetorical questions.
Exactly. But to ask the question, is prohibiting gun ownership compatible with the Second Amendment, must have missed that episode of Tall Tales where we talked about the Second Amendment, which episode was that?
That would be every episode.
Every episode, yeah. Okay. So here's pro-gun rights. The highest court in the land doesn't think so. In 2008, the Supreme Court decided 5-4 that the Second Amendment stated the right of people to keep and bear arms means you can own a gun for self-defense, striking down Washington, D.C.'s 32-year ban on handguns. Arguing for conservative Heritage Foundation, George Mason University law professor Nelson Lund wrote that the Second Amendment clearly recognizes the inalienable. I have to be very careful about how you use the word alien anymore.
These days, yeah.
Yeah, you could be branded a racist if you're not careful.
Yeah, or a nutcase.
Yeah. Okay, so anyhow, Professor Lund says that the Second Amendment clearly recognizes an inalienable natural right to self-defense. Lawmakers may outlaw certain types of weapons, but they may not disarm the citizenry. Now here's pro-gun control. Yeah, but you know, there have been times on Tall Tales when I have proclaimed Tall Tales to be a yeah-but-free zone for a limited period of time. So if I occasionally advance a well-thought-out, clearly presented theory, I would invite others to present clearly thought-out, well-presented theories on the same subject. But I have little tolerance for a yeah-but.
Yeah-but. I agree.
Okay, so here's the pro-gun control position. Yeah, but many other times this question has been brought up in a court of law. There's been a clear and consistent pattern, according to the nonpartisan, nonprofit National Constitution Center. And that's this. The 4 liberal justices in the 2008 case and federal courts have nearly unanimously ruled the Second Amendment, which refers to a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, only protects states' rights to maintain militias and not an individual's right to own any gun he or she wants to. Well, of course, obviously, the pro-gun position is seriously in error because it says only protects states' right to maintain militias and not an individual's right to own any gun he or she, instead of using the correct pronoun, which would be
them,
they.
Or they.
Yeah. Because if you use he or she, you are probably going to be accused of being sexist.
Yeah, well, you know, it so restricts people now.
Yeah. It could be something else, right? Yeah. Okay, so this is true. What this point makes is true. But 4 liberal justices don't write Supreme Court opinions. You have to have a majority. And if there are 9 people deciding, a majority is 5, not 4. So the Supreme Court has decided, just as Professor Nelson Lund stated in the pro-gun rights position. Now, I will say this. I have maintained this same position that a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state only protects states' rights to maintain militias and not an individual's right to own any gun he or she wants to. I have said that that would be the correct interpretation, and I have been unmercifully critical of Mr. Justice Antonin Scalia, notwithstanding the fact that he is the darling of conservatives. But he's not my favorite justice by a long shot. And I think that his interpretation, especially in the District of Columbia, was wrong. Because even if the statement that I just read is correct, the District of Columbia is not a state. But even though I think Justice Scalia got it wrong, the law of the land is that the Second Amendment does describe an individual personal right to defend yourself, at least in your own home. Mm-hmm. So if that's the law, and I'm not ready to get out on the street with a picket sign, which I'm capable of, then we'll go along with it. Scraping off the paint and varnish from the constitutional argument, if the Constitution didn't provide such a right, I would be in favor of such a right, even if it had to be created by statute, for the same reasons that the gun rights folks advance. So, tomorrow, this is argument number 5. Do Americans even want more gun control? So you're going to have to tune in tomorrow. You probably would anyhow, but you're going to have to tune in tomorrow for the probative discussion of that particular question and, of course, the all-consuming wisdom of my ruling on that particular subject. Okay, so we finished the Second Amendment, and next Michael will take us to Zemi Ikotny. The blue pencil someday will be able to do this all by themselves. Given the state of automation, digitization, algorithms, etc., there will come a time when you'll be able to pick up a blue pencil and place it on top of an editorial, and it'll be able to do everything that I do, which is to search the editorial for grammatical or usage errors, to check out the logic of the propositions presented, do some fact-finding and determine if the editorial is factually correct, step back and look at it like a literary critic and say, is this thing even readable? And then enter a ruling as to whether this editorial or the one in the other paper is the better of the two.
I think it'll be a while before that happens, though, Brother Bob, because even now Netflix can't figure out what shows I've already watched.
Yeah, well,
it could be a while.
It could take a while, but I have a feeling that it's coming. Mm-hmm. And, of course, I have an ulterior motive here in saying all this stuff because I suspect that somewhere on our international radio listening audience, someone is saying, wow, I wonder if Bob has patented that idea. Yeah. Maybe we ought to approach him, see if we could get a license on that idea. And maybe he could be a technical consultant.
That's right.
Yeah, but we'll see how it works. So the first editorial today, both papers wrote editorials and both homed in on the same subject, which is something that needs to be talked about. So it doesn't happen very often.
So today we're like comparing apples to actual apples.
We're comparing apples to apples. Yeah, manzanas and manzana. So it doesn't happen often, but there have been occasions in the history of Tall Tales when 2 blue stars were presented. Yeah, talk about an era of good feeling. I can just imagine the Managing editors, yeah, I can imagine the managing editors of both papers getting together for cocktails after the day's work is done on that one. Okay, so here's the daily news. Actions needed to help lower-income families. It's easy for local elected officials to criticize the military and the military buildup happening on the island right now. Now, who do you suppose these elected officials are? I'll give you a hint. Their initials are Clint. It's definitely easier to cast blame about the economic impact it will have on Guam than it is to recognize and acknowledge their own shortfalls regarding the island's economy. The military and the buildup are convenient targets. There is a lot of resentment on Guam over land takings, pollution, and other environmental concerns, the handling of cultural and historic sites, and other issues. On Tuesday, Senator Clint Rigel dredged out language from the military buildup's final supplemental environmental impact statement. Quote, lower-income people are more likely to slip into poverty under economic distress. The possible combination of higher costs of goods and services with higher housing costs would likely affect low-income people. Stressful economic circumstances may push people on the verge of poverty into poverty or even homelessness. But elected officials conveniently forget the role that they have played and continue to play in making life difficult for Guam residents, especially the economically disadvantaged. Years of borrowing to sustain a bloated government of Guam has resulted in residents paying $4,368 per person as of September 20, 2017. That's as far as the government debt is concerned. And for each dollar of assets the government owns, it owes $1.58 to others. Elected officials increased the business privilege tax from 4% to 5%, a 25% tax increase in 2018. It was meant to cushion the more than 100 million in projected annual revenue shortfall due to federal tax reform. But it was supposed to be paired with spending controls and only supposed to last 6 months. In 2017, the liquid fuel tax was increased ostensibly to repair secondary roads. But the main reason was to allow elected officials to plunder the highway fund where liquid fuel taxes are collected to help fund GovGuam agencies and programs. And elected officials still haven't made significant improvements to public transportation needed to make mass transit reliable for those who can't afford their own vehicles. That's a significant detriment to the economically disadvantaged. Before casting stones, our elected officials need to look at what they can and must do for Guam's lower-income families. Let me read that again. Before casting stones, our elected officials need to look at what they can and must do for Guam's lower-income families. Maybe this plan to install all glass walls around the perimeters of the legislature ought to be put on hold. Right, Michael?
I think, yeah, most definitely.
Okay. People who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Yeah. Okay, so that's the Daily News editorial. I'm going to go to the Post editorial, but before I do, I've got to stop for a moment on a column that appeared in today's Daily News by Robert Underwood. And I have to mention that I'm going to spend a lot of time with this later on because it appears to be the vehicle necessary to discuss almost all the issues that are on the table right now, which we have characterized so far as the Davis case. But Robert's column probably does that a lot better. So I'm going to talk about it. But I have to say that I'm a little disappointed. In fact, I'm very disappointed in Robert and what he said in his column. There are points that need to be made concerning decolonization, Chamorro decolonization, indigenous rights, and all these things. But demagoguery doesn't really increase anyone's understanding. Pretty good if you want to play the grievance politics game, or if you want to be a demagogue, fine. Yesterday's paper, Robert, when talking about the self-determination decision, or about the Davis decision, said this. He said this. Robert emphasized that the proponents of the plebiscite have a, quote, legitimate, ethical, moral position. It's not illegitimate. It's not racial. It's not meant to disparage anybody. It's really important to get that across, he said. Okay, well, fine. I will go along with that. It seems like an admirable sentiment. But then in his op-ed, he comes back with this. Talking about the challenge to the plebiscite vote, he comes back and says this. Predictably, the challenge came from an individual who has personally demonstrated disdain for the Chamorro people, criticizing their culture, and casting himself as a victim of their machinations. He appealed to a judicial process which will utter soothing words but deny the effort to exercise self-determination of any kind, let alone the Guam variety. Now, I don't like this for a couple reasons, one of which is personal. He's obviously talking about Dave Davis, someone that I consider at least an acquaintance, if not a friend, someone that I've known since he was a major in the United States Air Force, umpty years ago, who's lived on this island for a long time and made his contributions. And I don't know where Robert gets off saying these things. Perhaps he has some knowledge that I don't. But I think it's an unfair characterization of Dave Davis. So I don't like that. It's a cause for anger. Putting that aside and not looking at it from a personal standpoint, looking at it like this, what does beating up on Dave Davis do to further the cause of Chamorro self-determination or the understanding of the issues that we're dealing with today, all of which are complicated, all of which can be argued from several different points? This is the classic argumentum ad hominem. Robert is an educated man. He spent 10 years in the Colonizers Congress. He's been the president of the university. He's articulate and he's capable of making very cogent arguments. Why he had to lapse into argumentum ad hominem, I don't know, but I'll say this, it is a disappointment. Okay, I'm going to come back to Robert's column. I've got a lot of other stuff on the card today, which I'm sure you're interested in. So I'll come back to this, and it may take a couple of days to go through Robert's column and the issues that it gives rise to. You know, just a slight... and, of course, you know, you'd think if you weren't dead, you'd think that Howard Zinn was the co-author of Robert's column. Which it doesn't ring my bell either, but I can live with that. But I will come back to this and spend a little bit of time on it later on. Now, I have to tell you, I don't know, Robert, if you're listening or if anybody you know is listening, so this radio station is a talk show. Dos Stefano and I, English, tomorrow. English, tomorrow, DDD. The English part of it is na chalik and na boo-boo. That's about as far as I can go with it. I know you have your own radio station, Robert, and your own radio program, and perhaps what you're doing here with your ad hominem attack is to stir up some listeners for your own radio show. But anyhow, I'm going to come back to this later on. Next, we have the Post, and here's the Post article, the Post column. Post editorial. Guam residents living in poverty need opportunities, not an excuse. On one hand, we're glad that Senator Clinton Rigel, has put a spotlight on persistent Guam problem, poverty. Rigel is with the Guam legislature's Committee on Economic Development, Agriculture, Maritime Transportation, Power and Energy Utilities, Emergency Response. So this is right up his alley. Economic development, he wanted Clint's first pitch from the mound was an economic development initiative when he created a new industry. That is, rather than make it easier for people to buy a feel-good drug, he has created a new industry called the Cannabis Industry Act. So he has some bona fides here when it comes to economic development. And then the editorial says he can really make a difference on this issue. He could use his position toward providing more skills training opportunities for many of our island residents who do want jobs but don't have the skills to fill the jobs that are available. He could rally island residents to organize community gardens and work towards self-sustenance. He could help shape Guam's public assistance policies so there would be more incentives for island residents to get off generations of reliance on welfare. He could do something as simple as helping establish a legal slaughterhouse so people have a way to raise livestock for extra income and feed their families. He could find ways to help struggling families get a temporary lifeline on rent, power, water, and phone expenses on the condition they actively are trying to get skills training to get a better job or a better paying job. He could propose legislation to help provide job seekers and new workers transportation support so they'd get to their jobs on time. He could advocate for a rollback of the gross receipts tax increase, which has increased the cost of consumer goods to the detriment of those who have limited fixed income. Wow, the Post has just come up here and spelled out somebody's campaign platform for them. There are many ways Clint could positively impact the lives of thousands of families on Guam whose households have no income or have incomes below the poverty line. Yet in a press release Tuesday, Rigel's idea of addressing poverty is to cite information from a years-old report on the military buildup. While the military buildup is being touted for its economic benefits, the truth is, even the Department of Defense admits, that the buildup could increase the cost of living, hurt low-income families, increase poverty, increase homelessness, and increase crimes. These are not my assumptions, Clint says. These are the military's own findings as stated in the various studies they were required to publish as part of the National Environmental Policy Act. He cites the final environmental statement on the military buildup that, quote, lower income people are more likely to slip into poverty under economic distress. Low income people are more financially vulnerable because they have fewer resources to support them in difficult economic times. The possible combination of higher costs of goods and services with higher housing costs would likely affect low-income people, while those with many resources may thrive economically due to enhanced business opportunities. Stressful economic circumstances may push people on the verge of poverty into poverty or even homelessness. What he did not include were many parts in the same report, he being Clint, actually. What they did not include were many parts in the same report that mentioned the increased tax collections for government of Guam, the thousands of jobs that would be added to the local economy, and the estimated increase in payroll income by more than $200 million a year when the buildup goes into full swing. Rigel added, while the buildup may benefit some, everyone needs to know that the buildup may not benefit all. Shucks.
I think everything's like that.
Yeah,
Much, yeah.
I think life is kind of like that,
yeah.
unless you go to that magic place known as Utopia.
Or you work for GovGuam.
Well, if you can go to Utopia, but you can't get there unless you're a Democrat. In fact, you can't even imagine it unless you're a Democrat. Bernie Sanders has the tickets to Utopia right now. Okay, so where was I here? Everyone needs to know that the buildup may not benefit all. The people of Guam need to know that DOD's own findings suggest that the buildup could raise the cost of living, increase crime, harm low-income families, most of whom will not be hired for jobs in the construction industry or military civilian positions. Rigel's press release states, as with anything, economic uplift is not guaranteed for all. It never is and never will be in a democracy. Economic improvement, including by families in poverty, can be achieved by one's good old hard work and the attitude of not giving up and not resorting to excuses. Let's help to provide opportunities to people in households who are struggling to get by. Resiliency is one of our traits as island residents who are used to getting our houses knocked down in a super typhoon or our paychecks taken away by an economic recession. Let's build on resiliency. Let's offer ways to arm people with job skills and support those in the private sector who are bold enough to start their own businesses so they can hire more of our local residents. The real problem-solving stuff is hard, but it's not impossible. And if we had Elizabeth Warren in the studio, she'd say, I have a plan for that. Okay, well, that's the two editorials. Both are playing pin the tail on Clint Rigel. You remember that game he used to play as a youngster, Michael?
Yep, I could never win.
Yeah, pinning the tail on the donkey.
On the donkey.
Yeah, well, this time we're pinning the tail on Clint Rigel, which is appropriate because he is, after all, a Democrat. But we could title today's portion of Tall Tales as Clint Rigel Never Has a Nice Day. Because I have an item here that would ordinarily go on the card, except it fits so well into Zemi Ekotny, and it's called Greg Massey versus Clint Rigel. And this, of course, is from the Post. And it says, Labor Administrator, Senator's statements are not accurate. Of the 4,590 construction workers employed on Guam, 3,653, or nearly 80%, are permanent tax-paying island residents. And Massey goes on to talk about the 937 who are not island residents are skilled foreign workers who have been issued H-2B visas. The Guam Daily Post contacted Massey for a comment after a press release issued Tuesday by Clinton Rigel suggested that most of the construction work for the military buildup would be done by non-resident foreign workers on H-2B visas. Rigel's release stated, the buildup will create more jobs in the construction industry and military civilian fields of work, but most of these jobs are not jobs which local residents will be recruited. Many construction jobs will be filled by off-island skilled labor and H-2B visas. And here comes Massey, who is in charge of alien labor at the Department of Labor. And he said that would not be accurate. Only a small set of the occupations that are needed for construction would be coming as H-2Bs. 1 month ago, at the end of June, Massey pointed out that there were 18 local companies employing 928 H-2B workers, 9 fewer than the number employed as of yesterday. Those 18 companies also employed 1,197 Guamanians, 269 more than the H-2B employees they have on their payrolls. The suggestion that most of the build-up work will be done by foreign workers was raised during a June 24 press conference called by Talina Nelson, one of our squad, who announced a resolution calling for an indefinite pause in construction of the firing range complex on Northwest Field. Resolution 164 was endorsed by 13 of the legislature's 15 senators. Now, the guy that stuck out, the courageous guy that stuck to the truth and stood up for the right thing, was Jim Moylan. 13 other senators had put a complete pause on the buildup. During that press conference, here's some quotes for eternity. During the press conference, Senator Tello Taitigui said, "If they're a pause and it's the military pausing, then the economic impact will happen to them, happen to the military, not to the civilians that are working on the buildup." On second thought, she said, as far as economic impact, if it's bad, it's justifiable because we're protecting our culture. So, I'm listening to bumper music here. Bill Haley in the comments and Rock Around the Clock. Boy, I haven't heard that song for a long time. That was big when I was in high school, Michael. Okay, after the break, I'm going to award the gold stars, and then we'll go to the card.
Hey, do you know what time the bank closes? I need to deposit my check.
You know you can do that from your phone.
I can?
With Bank of Guam's mobile app, it's easy. Just endorse the back and snap a pic to deposit it into your account. You can do this from anywhere, anytime, which means no rushing to catch the bank and no lines.
With Bank of Guam's mobile app and online banking, we're always open. Visit bankofguam.com for more information. Bank of Guam, the People's Bank. Member FDIC.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training every morning on The Ray Gibson Show.
If I said the word mediocrity, what would come to your mind? I'm Jerry Robertson at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show. We'll talk about a place that most people will arrive at and never leave.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point. And now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So we went through the Meet the Press portion of the program. The Post and the Daily News both soared. Well-written editorials, no grammatical mistakes, no misusage of the English language, logical propositions, factually accurate, good punchlines, and best of all, I agreed with them, which is not an absolute necessity to get the Blue Star, but it don't hurt none. Okay, so today, the Daily News gets a Blue Star. There it is. Yeah. And the Post also gets a Blue Star. Now, this doesn't happen very often. It's kind of like an eclipse of the sun or something like that. But everybody out there in your international radio listening audience, you'll have a story for your grandchildren. Yeah, I remember back in
it was August 1st,
yeah,
2019.
Yeah, both of the editorials got the Blue Star. I was overwhelmed. It was shocking.
And if you're lucky, you'll say back when Guam was really messed up.
Absolutely.
Because then it won't be.
That's right. And not only did both get the Blue Star, they both opined on the same subject, talking about great minds reaching similar conclusions. Okay, so from there we go to the card, and this is what I've got on the card. And in this corner, weighing in at 175 pounds, from the heroic city of Houston, Texas, wearing the black shorts, Michael Knight.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, they don't do. There isn't as much boxing on TV as there used to be once upon a time.
Yeah, well, boxing by and large has really fallen by the wayside. MMA fighting, of course, much more exciting. It's got a better following, and of course, boxing's taken many hits over the years for the corruption and other things. So, yeah.
Did you say that boxing is taking many hits over the years?
I kind of did.
Yeah. That was kind of a knockout, Michael.
Yeah, I didn't even try.
Yeah. You've been hanging around tall tales too long.
I think so, yep.
Yeah. Well, I remember way back in the beginning era of television, back in the early 50s, there was boxing on TV a lot, and wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And Pabst Blue Ribbon used to have televise boxing 7 o'clock on Wednesday night and 7 o'clock on Friday night.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
And a lot of different weights, classes, et cetera, of boxing. And a local wag named Toad Hutton, who hung around a certain tavern, which was a really good place to watch the Friday night fights, right?
Right.
And when asked if he would be in to watch the Friday night fights, Toad, or if he was going to go home instead, and Toad's response was, "It don't matter if it's Wednesday night or Friday night. The fights don't start till I get home." So much for boxing.
That's right.
Okay, here's the card. We've got Taxpayers versus Chamorro Independence Commission. And this is a special request from the Ray Gibson show this morning that you might recall, Michael.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there are no squad reports today. I'm kind of surprised. I thought our squad would be rising up in self-righteous indignation over the Davis decision, but so far I haven't heard a peep out of our squad.
I think between that and the pay raises, they're all in shock.
Could be. And then as far as the squad, that's AOC in the gang. I don't know what happened to them. Perhaps they're too busy waiting for the debates, but they haven't done anything more outrageous than normal. So.
Well, someone probably reminded them that it's better to be silent and be thought a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt.
They've certainly done that. And perhaps, the international radio listening audience being as broad as it is, perhaps they've been tipped off that the tall tale spotlight is shining on them. So no squad reports today. I've got the Ethics Commission, our brand new Ethics Commission versus Major General Agagi. I've got the Civil Service Commission versus the Port, and that's the Suswiko decision. And I've got Lou versus Travel Regs, and I've got Legislature versus Transparency. Looks like I have a phone call too, right, Michael? Not quite yet. Coming in. All right. So this morning on the absolute top radio talk show, morning radio talk show host, the Ray Gibson show, the question was asked, or the issue was posed. Now that the Ninth Circuit has held that we can't have our plebiscite or ethnic-related plebiscite because it's violative of the 15th Amendment of the Constitution, what purpose does the Commission on Self-Determination serve? And I mentioned that I had opined on the same subject the day before, and my quick analysis, my horseback analysis, was it doesn't serve any purpose at all. It has kind of become irrelevant in the face of the Ninth Circuit decision. And then Ray wanted to know, well, if who would have standing to raise that particular issue? And the answer can be found at 5 GCA Chapter 7, which is entitled Enforcement of Proper Government Spending. And at Section 7103, you find a section that says taxpayer standing to sue. Any taxpayer who is a resident of Guam shall have standing to sue the government of Guam and any officer, agent, contractor, or employee of the executive branch for the purpose of enjoining any officer, agent, contractor, or employee of the executive branch from expending money without proper authorization, without proper authority, illegally, or contrary to law, and to obtain a personal judgment in the courts against such officers, etc., for the return to the government of any money which has been expended without proper appropriation, proper authority, etc. For the purposes of this chapter, the governor and lieutenant governor are officers of the government of Guam and are included within the scope of this chapter. So later on, the statute says the amount in controversy has to be $400, and there's a 6-month statute of limitations. So my horseback riding here, horseback opinion is that if a taxpayer who lived on Guam wanted to challenge the money that the what is euphemistically referred to as the Chamorro Decolonization Commission, but which is more properly referred to as the Chamorro Independence Commission. Okay, we got another break coming up. I guess the breaks got kind of close together there, huh, Michael?
Yeah, well, I didn't, you were on a roll earlier, Bob, and I didn't want to interrupt you for the 4:30, so I let you go over a little long, but yeah, we got to try to catch
It's so
it.
seldom that I get on a roll.
Seriously, you're like butter, man.
Yeah, okay, well, thanks for your consideration, Michael. And you are doing a double header again today.
Well, yes, sir, every day. That's all right, though.
Okay, well, thanks for playing Rock Around the Clock by Bill Haley.
Okay.
Hi, welcome to this Subway ad for the new ciabatta collection. How do you want it?
I'll take the slam poultry.
Sure. Italian ciabatta with mozzarella. When hunger reigns, you're my favorite umbrella. Tasty garlic steak and provolone. With you, my taste buds are never alone. Savory chicken pesto, you have my affection. For you complete the ciabatta collection. Thank you. That was the new ciabatta collection by Subway. Limited time only at participating restaurants.
Here at APL, our core values give the company its heart and soul. Whether it's connecting your business with our global network through our newly enhanced service or investing our efforts into giving back to the community, APL is committed to serving you. We humbly honor the opportunity to find innovative solutions for you and your business. To learn more about our enhanced service, call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com/Guam for more details.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Yeah, let's see. That's from Carmen. I can never remember the name of it. Good song. Very good music, Michael. Not as good as Rock Around the Clock, but
No.
good anyhow. Okay, so here we are. We got about 7 minutes till the big halftime show starts. I took a peek at Facebook here, and Jesse Limtiaco, who is as interested in Guam's political status as I am, comes forward and says, Dave Davis is fighting for all Guamanians except if you are Chamorro/native and want to change the political status. Treaty of Paris, Article 9, the civil rights and political status of native inhabitants of the territories hereby ceded to the United States shall be determined by Congress. I guess you weren't listening yesterday, Jesse, but I went into that very same point. That's what the Treaty of Paris said. So the United States agreed with Spain that it would determine the political status and civil rights of the inhabitants of those locations that it obtained from Spain, the Philippines, Guam, and Puerto Rico. Did the United States do that? Did the United States determine the political status of Guam? Yes. Did the United States determine the civil rights of the people of Guam? Yes. How did the United States do that, Jesse? In 1950, it enacted the Organic Act of Guam, and it said that the political status of the island of Guam is that it is an unincorporated territory of the United States. Did it determine the civil rights of the people of Guam? Yes. In that same Organic Act, there was a Bill of Rights that set out the civil rights of the native inhabitants of Guam. So that happened. So I don't know why anyone would raise, there are other arguments you could make that have some validity, but this one doesn't because it happened already. The United States did what it promised to do. Let me just see what else I've got here in the Facebook comments here leading up to the halftime break. Jesse, again, Dave Davis posted some bad stuff about Chamorros on some public forums and Facebook. We need to find receipts.
Yeah, I think that's what it said.
Yeah. Do you get a receipt for posting something on Facebook?
Yeah, evidently now you do. I don't know.
Huh.
I've never gotten mine. I feel cheated now.
Yeah. And then Ishmael Velez. Sorry, Bob, he didn't create any industry. I'm talking about Clint here. Clint was the prime mover behind the Cannabis Industry Act, but Ishmael says, sorry, Bob, he didn't create any industry. It's a free-for-all. There's no regulation or accountability and no way of taxing and accountability. Gosh, I guess I got snookered on that one. I thought he created a brand new industry for Guam.
You were already reeled into that one, huh?
Yeah. I guess you shouldn't believe everything you see. And then Tedo says in the 70s, Marine Drive from Tamuning to Anigua was where military went to get their rocks off. And Balachu regularly with their MPs and paddy wagons picking up uncontrollables and put them in the brig. Constant fights broke out. Many bars and massage parlors with the local residents were many. At times, there would be 100 military personnel lined up outside the massage parlors that only employs less than 6 women. Remember those crazy days? My question is for leaders that are so fast to say they're pro-buildup, what area on Guam will they designate and allow prostitution and other illicit acts to be on the main venue? Same as now, I think.
Yeah.
What would be different? Yeah. I think the massage parlors were there already. Okay. Let's see. Better introduce. Guess they better introduce legislation to this effect now. Tahi fan haji na senador para maaprueba este. Sorry, still Chamorro 101. Read between the lines. Okay. Well, I do remember the 70s, but I think we'd done away with the paddy wagons by the 70s. In the 60s, there were black paddy wagons, and there was something called the Armed Forces Police, made up of members of the Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps that would go out and patrol the bars, et cetera, et cetera. But I think by the 70s, that was over, but kind of doesn't matter. Let's see what else I got here. Romeo Carlos. Actually, Bob, the U.S. also signed on the Declaration on granting the independence to colonial countries and peoples adopted by the General Assembly. Well, maybe so, but that's not the Treaty of Paris. Okay, so we got that big halftime break coming up. I'm going to go back to Facebook after the break, and then we'll go into the rest of the card.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Turning up the heat. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. Last night's Democratic debate was the most combative of the 4 debates so far.
Will not be taken to task by Senator Biden.
I don't know what math you do in New York.
One of us has learned the lessons of the past, and one of us hasn't.
If you cross the border illegally, it's a crime.
What Vice President helped author in '94 was a mistake.
Round 2 of the CNN-sponsored debates in Detroit brought out deep differences among the 10 on stage over health care, immigration, and defeating President Trump. Senator Cory Booker, like most of the others, challenged frontrunner former Vice President Joe Biden.
Mr. Vice President, you can't have it both ways. You invoke President Obama more than anybody in this campaign. You can't do it when it's convenient and then dodge it when it's not. If you want to compare records, and frankly, I'm shocked that you do, I am happy to do that.
And the former vice president defending himself much better during this debate than last month in Miami last night, taking on Senator Kamala Harris over her health care plan.
Anytime someone tells you you're going to get something good in 10 years, you should wonder why it takes 10 years. You can't beat President Trump with double talk on this plan.
In 2019 in America, for a Democrat to be running for president with a plan that does not cover everyone, I think is without excuse.
And many of the candidates there need to come away from this week's debates to win enough supporters to make it to round 3 of the debates, which will be in September. President Trump gets a chance to fire up a crowd tonight when he travels to Cincinnati. It will be the first time since the audience chanted, "Send her back." That was at a gathering in North Carolina. And the perceived battle between the racist battle with Congressman Elijah Cummings coming up after that. This is Fox News.
Hafaday, this is Congressman Nicholas. Our office is currently visiting our villages, providing contact information for our office and taking any inquiries we may be of service with. All vehicles and staff are appropriately identified for your safety. Please feel free to let our constituent outreach team know how we can be of service to you, and thank you for your kindness.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the Office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with a true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine. A bistro look that feels like home. Their menu features local and traditional flavors with a twist. From their famous Calaguan Hafa to fresh ahi poke salad and their award-winning barbecue ribs. Mezcla takes your favorite local dishes and serves them with extra flair that you'll only find at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Stop by their newest location accommodation in the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon. For reservations, call 969-2652. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
North Korea commenting today on its recent missile launches. State-run media say that Kim Jong-un supervised test firings yesterday of a new multiple rocket launcher system that could potentially hit targets in South Korea and U.S. military bases there. Planned Parenthood of Missouri is fighting to keep its state's only abortion clinics open.
Planned Parenthood St. Louis Clinic continues performing abortions amid a denied license over state health violations, including botched abortions, and makes its case to remain open before Missouri's Administrative Hearing Commission. Its license expired in May, but was extended at least until today's hearing. Planned Parenthood and the ACLU also filed a federal lawsuit Tuesday challenging the abortion bill signed by Republican Governor Mike Parson that bans abortions beyond the 8th week of pregnancy, which takes effect later this month. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
If the clinic loses its license, Missouri will become the first state without an abortion clinic in nearly 50 years. Another state, meantime, is asking for federal intervention in the opioid crisis.
Arizona's Attorney General asking the Supreme Court to force the Sackler family, who own OxyContin maker Purdue Pharma, to give back billions of dollars they took out of the company. This is the latest maneuver from a state seeking to hold the drug company accountable for the opioid crisis. It also comes months after Purdue said it was considering filing for bankruptcy. A Sackler spokesman says the family denies the allegations in the claim. Lisa Lacera, Fox News.
And stocks tumbled on Wednesday over investor concerns that the Fed may be finished cutting interest rates. The Dow dived 333 points. The Nasdaq sank 98. The S&P 500 down 32. This is Fox News.
It's important to have claims process that works for you. At Guahan Insurance Services, we make things simple and convenient. Same door you walk in to purchase your insurance is the same door you open to file your claim. We can't pretend that the car insurance claims process is fun, but we can promise a hassle-free and speedy recovery without any runarounds. For your home, auto, and business insurance, visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center on Marine Corps Drive in Tamuning. Don't forget to like us on Facebook or give us a call at 475-1162 or text 929-SAVE. That's 929-7283.
Data roaming with Docomo Pacific. Navigate the city, look up the best restaurants, email back home, or post all your pictures, all on the go for free. Call 688-2677 today to make sure your postpaid account is ready for roaming. You plus Docomo Pacific. Better together. Some conditions apply. See print ad for details.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
No other talk radio show has such a great halftime show as Tall Tales presents every afternoon at 1700 or 5 o'clock.
That is a fact.
Yeah, I suspect that if there were a contest, Tall Tales would be first, and the next finisher would be about 12th.
Good one.
Okay, so back to still looking at Facebook here. Tedo describes some of the downsides of being what are ordinarily referred to as a camp town. Camp towns are cities located outside the gates of military bases. Phoenix City, Alabama, at one time was notorious as being the camp town very close to Fort Benning, Georgia.
Okay.
And what Tedo says is that in the 1970s, what was then called Marine Drive down in Inigwik was the classic camp town. Lots of bars, lots of fights, lots of massage parlors, which he alleges were fronts for prostitution. Yeah. Or let me clutch my pearls here.
Found a button.
Yeah, but camp towns do spring up around military bases. But is that something that we hold the military accountable for? Or is that something we hold local government accountable for?
Got to be the locals, man. They're the ones opening them up.
Exactly. It's got to be local government. So you kind of, if you don't want something, you kind of have to you have to enforce the laws against them. You can't just tolerate it and then blame it on the military, which I think is what Tedo is trying to do here. You Guam history buffs perhaps would go back to 1970 and the Gold Room scandal. Now, if you don't know what the Gold Room scandal is, ask some old timer down at the retail store to tell you about the Gold Room.
The Gold Room
The
scandal.
Gold Room scandal, yeah.
That sounds cool.
Yeah, it was cool. Okay, so then after that, Ishmael Velez comes back to rebut Clint and says, I'm sorry. It's cheaper for the military leaders on island to hire local people in federal positions than bringing people in. The opportunities are there. If people like if people like the senator would stop bashing the military, they, and he puts they in all caps, they would recognize that the majority of federal employees on island are local hires. And then Ishmael also mentions accountability. And Tedo comes back. Now it begins the dismantling of our laws that are created to assist and help our people. I don't know who thought that we go to the American court system, we would have a chance to keep the local laws in place. It's time our leaders focus on many problems we are facing now. Drug epidemic, medical, education, deeply in debt, local government, etc. And when it comes to our preservation as a people, we must push a cultural enhancement of our language, beliefs, knowledge, educate onto the next generation. Total federalization is coming. Wow, soon. We must, as our elders have done in the past, adapt, adjust, and overcome the many obstacles, changes that are coming, good and bad. One thing we tend to forget is that what is happening around, happening around the world is beyond our control and always will have impact to our lives, economy, and people, meaning all residents of Guam that call this island home. We all have to come together as one community to protect for future generations to come. Military growth and expansion will rapidly grow and grow throughout Guam in the coming years. Read the Organic Act, then you will really understand what the future holds for us. Well, I've read the Organic Act a lot of times, and it's not anywhere near as good as my crystal ball, Tedo. Marcus, let me go through a couple more of these comments here, and then I'll get to you on the phone. And then Jesse Limtiaco, Senator Bob, does the U.S. Constitution mention anything about colonies? As far as I know, it doesn't. I find it ironic that the nation that ended colonialism has colonies around the world. Well, I think you make a good point there. And no, the United States Constitution doesn't mention colonies. And regular listeners will know that I've opined more than once that the founders of the United States, the guys that drafted the Constitution, We're thinking in terms of of a republic, not an empire, as so nicely put by Pat Buchanan. A republic and not an empire, and they weren't thinking about an empire. And if they were, then some of the things that we're talking about all of the time would have been dealt with, like how do we participate in the election of our president and representation in Congress. When the country was founded, it was 13 colonies on the eastern seaboard with an idea that perhaps it would expand over the Appalachians and duplicate the same pattern that it established on the eastern seaboard. The last thing in anybody's mind was colonies. And in 1898, when the United States entered the Spanish-American War, there were vigorous debates about whether the United States should continue as an imperial nation or stop. Presidential elections turned on it. It was an extremely important issue, and obviously the empire folks went out and the Republican folks lost, and you've heard me opine on that more than once, refusing to use the word federal government in most cases because we don't have a federal government anymore. We have a national government that rules over our empire. And to the extent that sometimes folks here out in the colony think that the national government is insensitive to them, this won't make you feel any better, but the national government most of the time doesn't treat the colonies any differently than it treats the states, for whatever that's worth. Having said that, I still come back to my initial position, and that is that this is the greatest country, not only right now, but the greatest country the world has ever seen and probably ever will see. Because it was the only country ever founded on the concept of individual rights, that the rights don't come from the government comes from the rights of the people. And there are those who want to go a different direction. I'll leave the Democrats out of this, but I'll still maintain that same position. Okay, so and then Jesse Limtiaco says, is this a UN thing? Well, the UN is kind of like a very large sewing circle, if that isn't sexist. It's just a lot of people sitting around and nattering from time to time, attempting to be important, coming up with all kinds of philosophical posturing that they don't have to live with themselves, and then going out and creating and engaging in some pretty serious atrocities themselves when they weren't too busy virtue signaling. Somebody on here asked me what form of government I would like to see, and I've explained this before, but here goes again. And one more thing that Jesse said. I'm glad Jesse listens to Tall Tales because I think it's a good educational experience for him. Not that he's going to agree with me,
right.
But he'll at least, I think he's developing a better understanding of his own arguments. So Jesse said, statehood is virtually impossible. So it's really just status quo and independence. That's absolutely correct. That if we're going to change our status, there's only one place that it's going to go, and that would be an independent Guam. And no, I'm not for an independent Guam. This is only a 2-hour program. I can't give you all the reasons, but I'm not for an independent Guam. I have opined that from what I've seen from those who are stumping for an independent Guam, what they're after is an independent country governed by Chamocracy, government of Chamorros, by Chamorros, for Chamorros. I wouldn't fit into that very well. Also, I see that what the independence folks are really stumping for is the Chamorro Socialist Republic of Guam. Now, I could be wrong, but it's the chance that I'm not really very willing to take. So I think our appropriate status is to stay where we are, to say an unincorporated territory of the United States, but work with the national government to enhance some of the elements of our status. Yesterday, mentioned this morning, yesterday, Dave Davis brought up Commonwealth. Well, Commonwealth is the same status as what we have. It's not a different political status. The Commonwealth Act that we proffered would have just meant that Guam was an unincorporated territory, but some bennies would have accrued to us. And I think that's what we should work on. I've mentioned a couple of them. We could have a district court judge with life tenure. If we could persuade Congress, we could have control over our own immigration and our own labor laws, if that's what we want. We could have some impact on the Jones Act and a laundry list of other things. If we were an independent country, we would be a very small island in a very large ocean with some extremely powerful neighbors that probably would not be all that enamored with the Chamorro culture when it came to their approach to geopolitics. So, so much for that. I've still got Marcus. I'll give Marcus credit for one thing. Marcus is patient.
That's right. He hangs in there.
Yeah.
Buenos.
Yeah, buenos.
So I do have a thing. It's kind of like the same thing yours is. U.S., us, Marine Corps, us, Air Force, us, Guam. In what really, like, I agree, Hungan, you're right. Our status now is the best status with the most powerful nation in the world, and a Declaration of Independence and a Constitution that works. And I'm for independence. I'm for an independent party running and getting a whole slate of mayors, senators, and governor on Guam that is independent of both parties, the Democrat and Republican, and hopefully one of them bows out and just reinvents itself or something. But we can take control. I mean, look, if we don't have self-determination, then what is Lou Leon Guerrero doing and some of the senators doing for us? I mean, that's what independence is. You're under the control of your elected representative, and if you don't really trust them to do the job, you shouldn't vote for them.
I agree, Marcus. The nationalists don't like the sound of this, but we have almost complete home rule, and the parts that we don't have, because we haven't done it. We haven't adopted our own constitution, and we could, and we haven't adopted our own income tax laws, and we could do that. But there is a group of people who would rather sit around and kvetch, and their ability to kvetch would be lessened if we had adopted our own constitution.
And that's exactly what's going on in the UN with all these small micro countries now that dominate the agenda, and they get nowhere. So now, what's the United Nations Health Organ, WHO, and all those, they're not.
I think that's on first, Marcus.
Yeah, okay.
Who's on first?
You're right, sir.
I don't know. Who's on third?
Did you say I don't know?
No, I don't know's on third.
Yeah, that's our third baseman, Marcus.
Yeah, okay. Exactly. And, we can be independent. We just got to start acting independent, pick ourselves up by the bootstraps, as they say, and start cleaning up our own yards and skilling ourselves for better jobs, start our own businesses and pay a little bit of taxes and expect more from our government instead of what we get now.
I like Michael San Nicolas's approach. As I understand it, he's not going to the U.S. Congress and handing out crying towels to the other members of the House of Representatives saying, in 1898, something really bad happened to us. So excuse me while I dab my eyes here. Michael's approach is more like this, as I understand it. Guam's an important part of the United States. It's been good for the United States, and it will continue to be good. And if you work with us, it can be better for the United States.
Amen. Yeah.
If you're going out and selling something, you don't you don't want to tell the person that you want to be your buyer all the bad stuff about him. You come to the lady who answers the front door when you're out there selling encyclopedias, said, "Oh, this is Junior. He's such a smart boy. I'll bet he'd really like these encyclopedias." You aren't going to say to him, "That kid looks like he's dumber than a post, lady," and wonder what happened to your sales statistics. And that's been kind of our approach, you know.
Right, and it's more of a practical capitalistic approach rather than, government is not a good thing. So as an independent libertarian, constitutional libertarian, I think that, less government and more private enterprise would really look at GTA now. You go to GTA and you need land service, internet, cell phone. It's right then and there. They'll schedule, hook you up, and everything else. They'll go. You got to go get a stamp from your mayor, and you got to bring this over here, there, and then get this clearance and that clearance, and then come back and. Oops.
Well, when the old way when you went to GTA was you'd stand and kind of look over the partition, and you'd say, "Hey, it's my cousin," and then you give it a.
Before you know it, you're walking into the back room, and
I'm just being facetious here, Marcus.
Well, it used to be. I mean, actually, you're saying some truth, and we all know it. And as a mestizo, a tamale or whatever you want to call me, I serve my country, I serve my island, and I remember the stories of my ancestors. And it's important to know your history before you move forward. And it seems like a lot of people just aren't. I don't know. They're just in the moment.
People get caught up with their own talking points, and they think because they have mastered a set of talking points that they have an argument, and that it doesn't necessarily follow. So anyhow, Marcus, it's always good to talk to you, but I got another item on my card here: Ethics Commission versus. Yeah. When Probetzerlei? Still can be yeah. Okay, so that's a pretty regular caller there, Marcus. Going on to the next item on the card is the Ethics Commission versus Major General Esther Agagi. Yeah. In this corner, wearing a green uniform, Major General with stars on the shoulders, Major General Esther Agagi. Major General Esther Agagi, the Adjutant General of the Guam National Guard, received a 50% pay increase last week. Two key members of the governor's fiscal discipline team confirmed Friday, as they were Wednesday when asked. Both said they were not made aware of the salary increase until after it had been approved. Lester Carlson, the Director of Bureau Budget and Management Research, and Department of Administration Director Edward Byrne, both confirmed that a pay increase of $41,000 was approved for Agagi on July 24. Carlson said it became effective on July 8, the day the request for the salary adjustment was submitted. It was not retroactive to February 15 when Agagi was first appointed, as previously reported. Her remuneration went from $81,000 to nearly $123,000. It's not supposed to be retroactive, said Byrne. Salary increments for GovGuam employees, alternatively, there's no transition here, salary increments for GovGuam employees have been frozen since the start of the current fiscal year on October 1, 2018. Now, what Aggie got was not a salary increment, it was a pay raise. Big difference. For those who don't know the difference, a salary increment is something that comes to you periodically, annually, or every 18 months or so, usually based on a satisfactory performance evaluation, but at bare minimum, a beating heart, at least, is a requirement for a salary increment. Much different than a salary increase. Byrne said he was made aware of Aggie's pay increase Wednesday afternoon, and he would review the authorization in detail today. Carlson acknowledged that the authorization came from BBMR, the Bureau of Budget and Management Research, but he was away at the time when Byrne and other members of the fiscal discipline team promoting the recent $30 million bond borrowing to build a second trash cell at Lausanne landfill. So when the fiscal discipline team is gone, who maintains the discipline? There's one about cats. When the cats, how does that go, Michael? When the cat's away.
Oh, when the dog's away, the cats will play.
The cats will play.
Or when the cat's away, the mouse will play.
Yeah.
Depends on how you look at it.
So when the fiscal discipline team is gone, who's going to keep that fiscal discipline?
Free money for everybody. Isn't
I
it?
guess, yeah.
Everybody gets a raise. You
Yeah.
get a raise, and you get a raise. And
Yes.
you get a raise.
So I got a couple more points to make here, Ken, and then I'll take your call. I know you're pretty cranked up about this too. Okay, Carlson acknowledged that the authorization came from the Bureau of Budget and Management Research, etc. It was done in my absence, said Carlson. I don't know who authorized it. Were funds available? The question. And Carlson's answer, apparently they were, or we wouldn't have signed off on it. So a little background here on how the Government of Guam personnel system works. There are key documents, one of which is called the Request for Personnel Action. The other one is called the Notification of Personnel Action, which is erroneously referred to as a GG1. It's not a GG1, but it's one of those where, well, everybody calls it a GG1. So it's not worth the time to straighten that out. But just say that I'm looking at Esther's notification of personnel action, and she went from $81,522 up to $122,907, which is $59.09 an hour, by the way. Yeah, and the key thing here, ordinarily, you would see the director of an agency sign off on a request for personnel action, and then the notice of personnel action would be signed by somebody at the Department of Administration. So when I look at the signature block there, I see I see what amounts to a stylistic X, and underneath it, for Shane Ngauta, Human Resource Manager. So it's pretty hard to determine who approved it on the Department of Administration end, and until somebody can get the request for personnel action, we won't know if Esther signed it herself or if something like this. Now, I've styled this as Ethics Commission versus AGAGI, because if AGAGI herself gave herself this gigantic raise, funds were available, that's what the Director of Bureau of Budget and Management said, if she had the authority to do that, is it ethical for a sitting Government of Guam director, which is what she is, to give herself a 50% pay raise? Is that ethical? And that's the kind of thing. It could be legal. Maybe it's legal, but is it ethical? And that's what we want our Ethics Commission to decide on. The Ethics Commission has been confirmed. They haven't done anything yet, although there's some pretty interesting issues for them to look at, like the 3 senators who went to Taiwan on the government of Taiwan's nickel, and this one, and a couple of other things that have come up recently. So, Ethics Commission, where are you? This would appear to be grist for your mill. In the meantime, it's something that probably really irritates most of the population in a time when we're not supposed to have very much money for anybody in the Government of Guam to take a 50% salary increase. So I'm listening, I'm hearing rock around the clock in the background. When we come back from the break, Ken, I'll pick up the phone and talk to you, okay?
Hafaday, this is Congressman Nicholas. Our office is currently visiting our villages, providing contact information for our office, and taking any inquiries we may be of service with. All vehicles and staff are appropriately identified for your safety. Please feel free to let our constituent outreach team know how we can be of service to you, and thank you for your kindness.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959, and they'll continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer vacation or paying off those long overdue bills, Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $3,600 by calling Family Finance in Agutya at 475-4545, Upper Tumon at 647-5626, or in Dededo, 633-4473. Family Finance, serving the people of Guam since 1959.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, inviting you to try their double-cut pork prime rib chop, featuring a lightly smoked double-cut pork prime rib chop, pan-seared and oven-roasted to a juicy finish, served over a crispy potato hash cake, sautéed vegetables, and a black cherry wine sauce. Available in Hagåtña and in Tumon at the Grand Plaza Hotel. For reservations, please call 969-2652.
I hope Marcus was listening to that crack of the bat, because he was wondering who's on first.
He was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he said he said
he didn't know.
Yeah, that's third base.
Third base.
Yeah.
I wonder what he wanted.
Second base. Okay. So let me talk to the other Governor Leon Guerrero here. Good afternoon, Ken.
Afternoon. As you noticed from my email this morning, I'm preparing my first case to submit to the Ethics Commission, sort of a test, because we have a whole bunch of them. It's not just Aggie. You know, we have all the agency heads and directors. You know, they have a program as well, but instead of starting at step one when they're newly hired, they start wherever the previous director left off. Instead of starting at step one, you know, they're starting at step 8, step 9, step 10. So I'm going to see how the Ethics Commission handles that. Then I'm going to throw Angel Sabalan into the mix as well, because even though he didn't get as big a raise initially as Aggie did, she got a 41 in one whack. He got 30 in a whack. You know, so she set the bar, but he beat her ultimately with a $53,000 pay raise in 3 years.
So, well, the way I see it, Ken, it's the dollars are important, but if it was Esther Aggie herself giving herself that raise, that's one thing. If it's the Mayor's Council being so ill-informed that they wanted to do it themselves, I don't know that that's an ethical violation, arguably an ethical violation on the part of the executive director. But going back to Esther Aggie, if it were someone else that signed the papers, that adds another dimension to it. And then beyond that, what happens now after it was discovered could have an ethical dimension to it. Will there be some attempt to cover up how this happened?
That's going to be my first guess, because that's the way government of Guam rolls, you know. I mean, if we look back at the smash and grab in 2014, you know, that set the standard by which all other government departments and agencies have attempted to fleece the public, to feather their own nest. And right now, for me, when I look at all the GG ones I've seen so far, and I know that but that's all I know it is a GG1. And when I do a FOIA, that's what I ask for, and that's what I get. So
everybody knows.
Yeah, doesn't make it right.
Mm-hmm.
But it goes back to what we're looking at is a pattern. We have a pattern here of people. Now, supposedly the boards and commissions are independent of the government. The boards and commissions are the ones that should be, you know, recruiting heads. But they're not recruiting heads. The governor appoints somebody, and then they accept them. You know, what's the point in having an independent board and commission if everything they do is cater to, as they say, and I've been in these meetings where they'll say, well, what do we do about this? Well, we'll have to check with the front office. Why have an independent board and commission if all they're going to do is check with the governor's office before they do anything?
Sure enough.
We need to take a serious, hard look at this. And right now I'm on my way to my village meeting in Chalampago Ward at 7 o'clock at the community center. I thought I'd throw that one in there, where we talk about these things and what we need to do as citizens. Because if we don't do anything, then the politically well-connected insiders are going to just keep reaching deep into our pockets until there's nothing left.
Yeah, we go through that one from time to time with a real Joe Cruz about an enlightened and active citizenry being necessary to protect our democracy, right, Ken?
Absolutely. And that's what we're doing here through these initiative meetings. And we're basically going to write the laws that the senators won't write, because if they write those laws and have to live up to those laws, there's a real good chance they'll have to get a real job.
True enough.
So that's what we're working on right now. But the reason why I wanted to talk about that in particular is because we have an ethics commission that's appointed by the governor, confirmed by the legislature. What do you think the chances are that the ethics commission is going to look at another government appointee and raise concerns or act on it? I mean, look what happened when we took issues to the legislature. When we took issues about senators to the Legislative Ethics Committee, they blew it off.
A couple days ago, Ken, a Supreme Court decision dealing with YTK came out, and in that decision, it mentioned that Mary Torres had entered into an illegal conspiracy. This is in the Supreme Court decision, picking up the record from the trial court. And I use that as a focus as to say, well, what is our ethics commission going to do about this? There it is in black and white in an official paper. What will they do about it, considering that they'd be dealing with a sitting senator and the wife of a justice of the Supreme Court? And if they're not going to do anything with it, then they might just as well fold up their tent and go away, because they'd be useless.
Well, that's one of the reasons why one of the initiatives is to have the Attorney General be appointed by the governor and have a publicly elected prosecutor. Because when Governor Calvo signed that illegal contract with GRRP, I mean, it's illegal. He signed a contract to do something that's against the law. I went to the Attorney General's office and I was told, well, we can't do anything about it because, quote, we represent the government of Guam.
Yeah.
You know, so if the elected Attorney General is going to represent the government of Guam, we need to get somebody that will take a bite out of crime, so to speak.
We went through that.
We need to have a.
We went through that same drill with the retroactive pays at the government, at the executive branch. Remember where Liz Anderson disqualified herself because she had advised the governor on that point. We needed a special prosecutor, and we never got a special prosecutor.
Well, the only people that picked up the packets were the governor's attorney and the attorney for the governor's campaign.
Yeah, I got a couple people wanting to get on the air, Ken. So I'm going to have to say goodbye. But I appreciate your calling in. Okay.
All right, and once again, 7 o'clock tonight, Pago Community Center.
Okay.
I'll talk to you later.
Very good. Okay, so I got a caller online now that always makes his mark when he calls in, right?
You got it, Senator.
Okay. Let's mark another one up for you, Mark.
Thank you. I need some legal advice.
Okay.
If there are requirements for a position in the government of Guam, and as part of that process is confirmation by the legislature, and a person does not meet all the requirements in Guam Code annotated for that position, and they have still been confirmed by the legislature, is that still are they still legally, or I guess, to be there, or should be there, or could it be challenged?
I would have to say that it would survive any challenge based on the separation of powers argument, that when the legislature acts in its official capacity, the judiciary very seldom will look behind the legislature's acts to see if they complied with their own rules and procedures. So I'd have to say probably such an appointment would withstand a challenge. Who are you thinking about?
The Adjutant General.
Who doesn't meet the qualifications?
Guam Code annotated said that you had to be a lieutenant colonel promotable.
Uh-huh.
She was never in a promotable status as a lieutenant colonel.
Okay.
And when I brought it up before with some other people, I was told, well, the National Guard doesn't use that term. Because she was considered for promotion, she was therefore promotable. But my military career, promotable meant you had set before, or your record went before a board, and the board, verily, verily, we will promote you. And then you were in a promotable status until you were promoted.
And when you saw your name, rank, and serial number on the paper, the letter P in parenthesis would follow your rank, right?
Pretty much so.
Yeah, Lieutenant Colonel LTC parenthesis P close parenthesis, right?
Or your name came out on a list. The following were selected for promotion.
Yeah.
And her name was never on a promotion list. She was not selected by Department of the Army Board. She was not selected locally. So my question, as I've been asking, is, geez, since she wasn't promotable, why even have that as a law if you're going to sit there and disregard it as far as time for confirmation?
That's a really good point, Mark. I hadn't thought of that. Very good point. At the National Guard, of course, there's such an interplay between civilian and military. I wonder how her lack of being promotable would affect her being promoted to Brigadier General. I guess she couldn't be, huh?
Well, right now, as I understood, and I read in one of the articles, and I saw just not too long ago, she is still a lieutenant colonel under federal rules. She has not been federally recognized as a colonel, let alone being a real general.
Yeah. Yeah,
she's a general in Guam Guard, and it reminds me of, I don't know, years ago, if you saw where these guys out in Montana, Idaho, were creating their own militias, and suddenly there's a guy saying, I'm a major general in the best boy militia of Montana.
Yeah.
Because I say I am. That kind of reminds me of that.
Well, the National Guard has come so far. It's unfortunate that we're stumbling the way we're stumbling now. Something that she did here recently that really stuck in my craw, Mark, was this guy, Jerry Guerrero, who was accused of really serious crimes, filming his sex acts with a 14-year-old. And he was busted by the FBI. The FBI came down and took him right out of the National Guard headquarters. And she came out with a right virtue signal. We don't tolerate that sort of thing in the National Guard. And then her spokesman said, well, you know, he's innocent until proven guilty. It says so in our Constitution, and he's still employed. You know, that really didn't sit very well with me, and I suspect not very well with the other 1,000 guardsmen in the National Guard.
And it bothered me as well is because when something like that happened, my question is that his rank, he probably has a secret clearance.
Yeah.
When you come down on that kind of charge, guess what is supposed to happen to your clearance?
Yeah.
It gets pulled for the time being until resolution, meaning he could not be acting in a position with any classified material or being in anything involved with classified material.
True enough.
And so, yeah, when that one came down and I heard that one, I was wanting to call into you, but I just, for whatever reason, I couldn't. I just shook my head and went, you know, okay, the Guard's going to play their way. Yep.
Yeah, well, we gotta keep after him, Mark. I did write a frank but fair letter to the Adjutant General on that whole Jerry Cruz thing, and now that you've, Jerry Guerrero thing, now that you've drawn my attention to it, I'm going to kind of think a little bit about this colonel promotable business too.
All right. Hey, have a good day, Senator.
Thanks for calling, Mark. Okay, so we've got a short break coming up here, Barry, and then I'm probably going to be allowing you to close out the show today, Barry Mead.
Weekday shopping just got exciting. Join the Agania Shopping Center's Shop and Win on Weekdays promo. Shop or dine at any ASC store or restaurant on weekdays from now till October 31st. Show your receipt at the ASC booth and win instantly. Every $20 spent gets you an entry form to win big at the monthly draws, including round-trip tickets to Manila, $500 ASC gift certificates, and more. See posters and print ads for more. Special thanks to Sky Zone, Fundamental Riders, Vince Schulers, and Wendy's.
Parents, start your child's school year right with healthiness and fun. Complete your child's immunizations, annual physical, dental, or eye exam at FHP and receive a free gift for each exam visit. Perfect for back to school. Valid from July 15 to August 31st or while supplies last. Visit their website or Facebook page for more details. Call 646-5825 and press 2 to schedule an appointment today. Most private insurance accepted. FHP Health Center, our island, your clinic.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
So here we are once again, called to the post at Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky, home of the Kentucky Derby. We're heading down the home stretch of Tall Tales, and I'm going to ask Barry Mead to be a jockey and lead the field towards the home stretch. Go for it, Barry.
Ta-da-da-da-da-da. Hey, man. I was going to put the thing that Mark called about as a second question, but since he raised it up, yeah, the issue of promotable, he wasn't alone in raising that question. And if we remember correctly, what happened was she was first promoted to colonel. She put on a full berth. Then, when she was confirmed, is when she put on the 2 stars. So she, in essence, got a 3-step, if you will, promotion, going from a light colonel to the general. And I looked up the Guam law, and he's right. I said, wait a minute, how in the hell can they do this? They've stepped over 3 other generals to do this. And so, I looked it up, and he's right. Oh, yeah, you got to be lieutenant colonel promotable. Well, she's not promotable, especially with a letter of reprimand in her file. So, After I'm listening and I caught the gist of what your conversation was, that she signed the paperwork for her own pay raise, somebody made a comment, or you made a comment about, well, maybe after she realizes what she did was wrong, and I go, wait a minute, what did she get a letter of reprimand for?
Yeah, that was dealing with her housing allowance.
Exactly. And when did she pay it back? After she was caught. And I've always said, you know, I was a warrant officer. I knew better. Enlisted guys know better. You know what your housing allowance is. She says, oh, I knew there was a mistake, but. Well, then, excuse me, Colonel. When you walk into that finance office as a colonel and say, you guys are making a mistake, you think they're going to listen to her? You're darn right they are. So I have a lot of problems with her being the adjutant general. And this latest little trick, signing her own pay raise and everything.
Well, I don't know that she did. I said we'll have to see. We'll have to see her notification. I mean, her request for personal action. But I'm postulating, if she did, is it an ethical violation?
Oh, God, come on, man. You and I know better.
Well, I'm trying to put the heat.
Would you do it?
No, I wouldn't do it. I'm trying to put some heat on this new ethics commission that has been a talking point for Lulian Guerrero. Well, I appointed an ethics commission, and now we got it. They're confirmed. I want to see them do something or fold up their tent and go home.
So my question that was going to be on that is this. Is the charge of the ethics committee to undertake anything they become aware of that may possibly be an ethics violation, or is their charge to only answer to complaints of ethics violations? Remember, going back to when we were the, FOIA council.
Yeah.
We didn't go looking for them. We only answered to them.
Yeah,
so
well,
the question here is,
as far as this ethics commission is concerned, they can sua sponte, pursue a matter on their own motion. They don't need a complaint.
Well, so now all it takes is a bunch of people start writing the ethics commission letters and saying, why are you not looking at this? Why are you not looking at that? And let me file an ethics complaint on you guys.
Okay.
Hey, dude, you told me to end the day good. There you got it.
Yeah.
So when do we file an ethics complaint against the ethics, or do we file that against the governor?
Well, my analysis was that, you know, she appointed some people, and without being disrespectful to any of them, I didn't see anyone in that group that had the kind of juice that's necessary to get something like that up and running. People, you know, when a commission like that, you're not looking for people with an abundance of patience and tolerance and things like that. You're looking for somebody who wants to get the thing up off the ground and get it rolling and go out and do some ethics. And I didn't see that in any of the people who were there. My analysis was that this will be a good talking point for Lou's reelection campaign. I was the first governor that appointed an ethics commission. They didn't do squat, but I appointed them.
That's right. That's right. Just like a lot of other commissions and boards and everything else that get appointed, and then you run into, I mean, you know, case in point, Guam Education Board. You saw the email response to your question you asked me.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, man, I'm going after the AG. I'm going after the superintendent. I'm going after the education board, and I'm going after the legislature. Everybody that was in that email is going to be hearing from me again.
Well,
I like the direction it's coming from. And the last one, the GVAO is getting a FOIA request.
The who?
I don't know where all the money went to the Guam Veterans Office.
Okay.
I want to know where the money went for the cemetery.
Okay.
It's coming.
Okay, Barry. Well,
we've had a major change in the Guam Vets Commission. Has had a major change in leadership, and you're going to see action.
Okay, I'll be watching.
Yeah, buddy. Hey, thanks a lot, man. And I'll be talking to Ray in the morning about the secretary's visit.
Okay, thanks for calling, Barry. Always good to chat with you.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day.
Yep. Okay, so Barry Mead, and another person who understands the military process now.
Clearly, yes.
Yeah. The Guard is complicated because she could be a major general in the Guam National Guard, but not be federally recognized as a major general. Before she was appointed TAG, the Adjutant General, she was a regular guardsman, but she was working full-time in the Guard. When she became Adjutant General, she then becomes an employee of the government of Guam as the Adjutant General, the director of a government department called the Department of Military Affairs. It's probably got 20 employees at the most. Mm-hmm. And that's where she draws that big salary as the Director of Military Affairs, as the Adjutant General. But like any other guardsman, she has to do her drill. So she has to drill 1 weekend a month. She's got to do her 15 days annual training and whatever other extra extra duty she's assigned. But she is, for employment purposes, a civilian employee of the government of Guam. And that's how she was able to shoot up from lieutenant colonel to major general so fast. But it's something we need to think about here on Tall Tales. Okay, another exciting episode of Tall Tales. I've still got a lot of good stuff on the card left over today, so make sure you tune in tomorrow to wrap up another informative week here on Tall Tales. See you tomorrow.
The Point is KU Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3. HD3.
Democrats duke it out. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. 9 presidential hopefuls went after frontrunner former Vice President Joe Biden during last night's debate in Detroit. But unlike the first round last month in Miami, Biden came back swinging.